Hello everyone and welcome back to another screencast. This one is on number and it's ratios in their simplest form. It's going to be really accessible, and as long as you know how to cancel down a fraction, you're going to use those exact same skills to cancel down a ratio. And the question here is why? Why do we want to do it? Well, it's like when you go to the zoo and you see that lovely lion behind the cage and they look so nice and you think, you know what, if I hopped in there I could probably go up there and pat the lion and it'll be all okay. But sometimes you see them and you think there's no way I'd hop in that cage with that lion, it'd bite my head off. If we can make that ratio as small as possible, then it's a little bit like this. When we've got these big numbers, it makes it often quite difficult to work out questions, but if we simplify them down, it would be like going into the cage with my cat, which would be a piece of cake, wouldn't it? And that's just like what we're doing today. We're going to take big numbers, and we're not really going to look at big numbers today, but we're going to take bigger numbers and we're going to make them as small as possible so that therefore when we work things through, it becomes easier. So it's all about sharing, and I always liken it to food or money, remember? So on these occasions, we're not going to talk about food or money, but we are just going to go and simplify ratios down. So let's try the first example. And I say that I'm not going to talk about food. I'm going to give you donuts for a start. So all this is for every 2 donuts one person gets, the other person will get 6 donuts. You may have done this before, but this can be simplified down. And we don't necessarily need to simplify every question down, but some questions we have quite large numbers, so it's to our benefit to simplify them down. But we can simplify this down by looking for a number that is divisible by both. So 2 is divisible by 2 and 6 is divisible by 2. So therefore we could divide them both by 2. So we're going to do that now. And we got 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. And 6 divided by 2 gives us 3. So that ratio could be simplified down to 1 donut to 3 donuts. Okay? And that becomes much simpler because when we're going to then share out, let's say 12 donuts or 20 donuts, therefore we've got a much smaller ratio to work with, which becomes easier. Let's look at some more examples. So here we've got 5 parts to 10. So let's just think about donuts. For every 5 donuts one person gets, the other person gets 10, and that can be simplified down. What number goes into both these two numbers? 5 goes into 5, 5 goes into 10. So we can simplify those down. If we divide that side by 5 and we divide that side by 5, we can rewrite the ratio as 1 to 2. 5 divided by 5 gives us 1. 10 divided by 5 gives us 2. That is how we simplify that ratio. Let's look at the next question. What about this one? These are really simple, aren't they? You know, 4 goes into 4 and 4 goes into 12. So if we divide that side by 4 and we divide that side by 4, we end up with 1 part to 3 parts. Now, sometimes they're not going to go in as easy as that, but I'm sure that you get the drift now. So I want you to give these next ones a go. Now, this one over here is a little bit more difficult, but follow the same procedure through and you will be fine. So what number goes into both these numbers? Well, 3 does, doesn't it? So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. 6 divided by 3 gives me 2. So that ratio is now in its simplest form. And just like when we're simplifying fractions, you may need to do this multiple times to get down to the smallest one. Often we don't go for the big number for a start, but we just nudge it down. On this one, they are all divisible by 2. 2 is divisible by 2, 4 is divisible by 2, and 8 is divisible by 2. So we can divide all of them by 2. And we end up with 1 to 2 to 4. And I think these are the last examples before we move into the quiz, which I'm sure you'll be absolutely thrilled about. Just remember that over here, again, it might take you multiple times to get down to the lowest one, but just take your time, go through the same process you'd go through for fractions. If you haven't watched that screencast or you need extra help, then there's one there for you. And on this one, just remember we're looking at 2s and 3s for a start. But take your time. You might even then go up even further than that. I think I definitely do. But give it a go. Come back and see if you've got it correct. So on the first one, both of these are going to be divisible by 2 for a start. So we end up there with 5 to 10. But that can also be divisible by 5. So we'd end up with 1 to 2. Now you may have said, well, they're both divisible by 10, and you'd be correct. So it doesn't matter how you got there as long as you got to 1 to 2 parts. On this one here, I started with divisible by 2. Everything's divisible by 2, so that's what I'm going to start with, and I ended up getting 6 to 18 to 9. But then I looked at it and thought, okay, well, they're still divisible by 3, so we can go and do those now. And then we're going to end up with 2 parts to 6 parts to 3 parts. Now you may have just jumped straight in there and you might have gone and they're all divisible by 6 for a start, but you can see how we nudge it down if that's what you need to do. It is now time for the quiz. So if you've done really well on those earlier questions, then it's time for you to do the quiz. If you've struggled on the earlier questions, it's very important that you don't just rush into the quiz. But anyway, if you're here, you're here. So give it a go, come back and see if you've got it correct. So we're converting the following ratios into their simplest form. Let's have a look at the answers. So these are all divisible by 3, 5, 6 and 10, and we end up with 1 to 3, 1 to 3, 3 to 4, 3 to 4 to 5. Fingers crossed you got all of those correct. If you got one wrong, it's not the end of the world. You still know what you're doing. If you got 2 wrong, then you still probably know what you're doing. You might have made some silly errors there. If you only got 1 right, then you do need to go and rewatch and redo. And ask for help. Ask your teacher or myself for help, and we'll gladly give it to you. As always, make sure you write a revision card on this. It's very important to your future success. So either write your own or get in contact with me via the comment section below, and I can send you an electronic copy of all of these cards. Until next time, it is always a real pleasure helping you with your maths. Hopefully you enjoy watching these. If that's at all possible, I know I enjoy doing them for you.